So hello everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Today I wanted to talk to you about the 3D road ahead for ArcGIS. And I'd like to break it into three key parts. First, we'll cover what's new. Traditionally, a road ahead presentation doesn't really give you things that you can go and test out and use right away because it's down the road. But today will be a little bit different. Second, we'll cover our recent partnership with Autodesk and what's been released and what's being worked on. And finally, third, we'll dive into the solution products in a little bit more detail that were announced earlier today and talk about roadmaps. So let's kick it off by talking a bit about 3D at Esri and what's new. So from Sean and Thibaut's presentation just before me, you've seen the complete overview of 3D across ArcGIS. GIS is 3D, and with the introduction of scene services a few years ago, similar to the feature service, you're able to apply 3D GIS data to the same web GIS deployment pattern that Jack was mentioning earlier this morning, that you've become accustomed to in 2D. So for example, this means that you can publish one layer of 3D data, like a layer of buildings, and then share and use that single layer throughout the organization. So 3D has seen huge growth across the ArcGIS platform in 2018. Here are some of the recent focus areas. With Esri's recent partnership with Autodesk, we have enhanced many of our core capabilities to support AEC workflows. We've rolled out interactive 3D analysis tools across ArcGIS Pro, ArcGIS Earth, and CityEngine, as well as some in the web scene viewer itself. These new interactive tools continue to be added. Both the web scene viewer and ArcGIS Earth are now available for mobile devices. New experiences in underground modeling and navigation have been introduced. Advancements in urban planning, including the announcement of ArcGIS Urban, and improvements to CityEngine's drawing tools. Two new VR templates have been recently released through our new partnership with Unreal Engine. It's one of the top game engines. And we see our partners start to deliver AR products, as you've seen here in this conference, using our runtime API. Finally, lots of new content has been added to Esri's Living Atlas, like the global terrain layer from Airbus, and new partnerships with Nearmap and Vricon are now delivering integrated mesh directly to our scene layer format, which means you can provision a mesh for anywhere in the world now. So as we dive in, you'll notice on each of these slides there's a little learn more link, so you can either take a picture of the slide or wait till the end where I'll have all of them on one page, up to you. The latest release of ArcGIS Pro has seen enhancements to both interactive analysis and editing capabilities in 3D. The interactive tools that have been in increasing demand as our user expectations have increased and as 3D data has become more available. In the future, we're developing new measuring tools for volume and interactive simulation for flood and shadow assessments. You can now also directly edit imported OBJ, object format, and Collada, or a DAE, directly, and also that includes the multi-patch, which is the geodatabase feature for 3D, and scene layers as well, which can be recached and hosted as a scene layer in Portal. Improvements to 3D cartography enabled support for military and scientific symbology. ArcGIS Pro also now has smart mapping symbology for 3D object layers, and this would be similar to the web scene viewer, which will work on almost any web scene layer. Animation tools have also been updated with new overlay functionality for text and images directly over your animations as you're creating your storyboard. And finally, I put this last one in here because oblique workflows are sort of 3D. And now in ArcGIS Pro, you can edit and measure directly in the perspective image space in obliques. With the latest release of Scene Viewer for both ArcGIS Online and Enterprise Portal, you've seen enhancements to search, navigation, and rendering capability. Scene Viewer is now available on mobile through standard web browsers. So that means Safari for the iPhone and Chrome for Samsung devices. This is a lightweight viewing experience rather than a full editing capability that you'd get in a standard web browser on a desktop PC or a laptop. Scene layers can now be published for large point data sets. So I'm not talking about a point cloud, which is in the previous demos. Those might come to mind, but we do that too. This would be for thousands and even millions of features. This might be, for example, fire hydrants across all of Singapore that need to be streamed in an efficient manner. So now you can publish millions upon millions of points. Edge rendering was introduced and will continue to evolve for 3D object layers in the scene viewer. So recently we've added a sketchy style to these edge rendering capabilities. Give it a try with one of your existing scenes. There's no need to republish the 3D layer. The styles can be applied directly in the scene viewer as symbology. You can also now set the scene viewer to enable underground navigation for global scenes. You've always had the ability in local scenes, but now with global scenes you can both navigate underground as well as adjust ground transparency with a slider. The scene viewer can also be set up for default search functionality to include attribute fields. So you might be familiar with looking up an address in our scene viewer or even web map. Now you can tell it which attribute fields you want to include in that search. And finally, are there any Xbox gamers in the audience? No? No one has Xbox? All right, I have an Xbox. So now you can plug in your gamepad and you can actually navigate directly in the web scene itself through the browser. The latest release of ArcGIS Earth, it now includes a mobile app version for Android and also the same interactive analysis tools as Pro and CityEngine. This means that you can collect information with ArcGIS Earth now using your mobile device. It's a little bit more lighter weight than Collector or Survey 123. The line of sight and viewshed analysis can also be performed along routes. There we go, as shown in the small laptop there. This is to simulate cars or aircraft like drones. You can also simulate walking in a 3D scene using ArcGIS Earth by just moving the device in front of you as well. So huge enhancements there. You can also download directly from the Google Play Store. The latest release of Esri CityEngine takes interactive analysis tools to the next level with the ability to quantify the viewable areas in real time based on the layers in your project. So it'll actually tell you the percentage of green space, trees, roads, just based on your layer tree. One of the larger development efforts this year has also been to improve the drawing tools, which now can create forms such as arcs, circles, rounded corners on your polygons. And you can also offset and union shapes, critical for drawing pathways, for example. You can now publish your own terrain modifications to a TPK. This is using the same LERC compression that you would find in a web scene as you open it up for the whole world. This allows you to publish your terrain and seamlessly combine it into our global terrain layer that's in the default scene. CityEngine can now connect to your large hosted feature data layers, which means that if you have parcels for an entire city, like all of Singapore, it's going to be able to pull down a subset of that larger data set and also allow you to synchronize editing. We can also model for curved shapes. That's been introduced with a new function in the CGA. This means that you can actually bend, for example, models of guardrails around a curvy street or tunnel. So those are useful for those modeling tunnels. And finally, there are two new templates that have been released for Unreal Engine. One focused on real-time visualization and the other focused on providing a collaborative experience around a virtual tabletop 3D scene. So there have been increasing customer requirements for VR. Our development efforts have been focused on the use of two primary devices. One is the Samsung Gear, which is very portable and quick to set up and use. The second is the HTC Vive, which is really the high quality, high definition, together with our partnership with Unreal Engine. ArcGIS 360 VR has seen adoption throughout local governments, for example, to envision the future. Here we see how the city of Zurich actually uses it to judge design competitions. The HTC Vive can sometimes be a little too complicated and relies on a powerful computer, a gaming laptop to make it run. So this portable VR device is actually preferred when having to meet with clients in a public setting. However, for those using the HTC Vive or interested in getting started with that, we did release the tabletop experience. So this can be found in the Unreal Engine store. The template provides a collaborative space for multiple users to inhabit. So you can see there 2 people across from each other. The actual panoramic image behind the table itself can be customized, so you can actually input your own. And what you're seeing here is a tabletop that you can spin, you can scale, based on your content that's exported from CityEngine in this case. The actual tool that you're holding, it's a controller that comes with the HTC Vive, allows you to switch different scenarios, also allows you to manipulate what time of day it is. And so again, this is ready, so we'd be interested in your feedback. And it's actually out in the partner exhibitor space as well, as I've been told. So go and give it a try. It also allows you to shrink yourself. So if you've seen the new, I think it was Matt Damon movie, you can get small and stand on top of the table and actually see your projects in real life. So now let's move on to an important road ahead topic for 3D at Esri, GIS and BIM integration. This is the #1 priority 3D feature request from customers and partners year after year. We give our partners and customers virtual money to spend on features, and typically this gets all the money. So for many of our users, real-world 3D means buildings, bridges, roads, and other infrastructure in their geographic context. When we first launched the 3D scene layer as a new standard for streaming this large, complex 3D GIS content, we opened up this small pipe that people instantly started to try to stream whole skyscrapers through, coming out of Revit. So basically, as soon as we started saying that we could provide users the ability to work with 3D at city scale, they interpreted that to mean every asset in the city at any scale. We're working on that. Many of you have seen this diagram. When we looked at what people were really interested in, it can be summed up as BIM being used to capture detailed information about assets, and GIS providing that information about how those assets operate and are used in spatial context. So the BIM and GIS workflows are continuous. They're happening all around us, whether or not we make the software talk nicely to each other. But clearly, BIM and GIS should be able to be worked together and provide information about the entire life cycle of urban systems. And this is what we would call an executive diagram. You see a thin blue and orange line going around the outside, and really it's not that easy. There's many handoff points where even in the detailed design phase of a project, you'd have to hand it back to the PM at the city for permitting and that sort. So we see this as a much more complex process that's needing to be supported. The BIM process itself needs that spatial information, typically to eliminate uncertainty in the very beginning of the design construction process, to eliminate the errors that might happen. It's much easier to redo your city plan than it is for an engineer to rebuild a bridge after it falls down. So if this is so obvious, why isn't the machine already working smoothly? Well, what we find is that, and I'm sure many of you know, is that there are typical roadblocks in the integration of BIM and GIS information systems, typically limited in the interoperability of data, but also work that might also occur at different scales. So in response, we've partnered with Autodesk to start streamlining this very complex combination of workflows, processes, and data sources. After all, BIM is a process, GIS is really an information system, so already it's a little bit more complicated. Specific developments to date that are released and available to all of you include the ArcGIS integration through Portal directly into InfraWorks, which was mentioned, as well as AutoCAD, which has been supported now for over 10 years, I would say, which ensures a continuous connection to the context of the site from which the project is happening, and the environment through applications like Collector, which could be used on the ArcGIS Online or Portal space. ArcGIS Pro now has the capability to read Revit files directly without duplication or translation, allowing you to break up the Revit file into feature classes with primary domains like structural, plumbing, electrical. You've seen a bit of that today if you've been in this room for very long. And we're also continuing to work closely with our partners on API integrations. Many of these are project-based, but they're able to be explored and done at a project level because our open standards exist. For BIM 360, it's the Forge API, and in ArcGIS, we have our JavaScript API. Future work, it's also looking at how ArcGIS can integrate with other applications within the Autodesk AEC collection. And at Esri, we're also developing new types of specifications that can stream out and efficiently manage these very complex assets all at the same time. Many times we see coming from our customer requirements to have, for example, all the BIMs of Singapore all at once down to the doorways. So we're trying to make that happen. The integration of GIS and BIM really leads to smart cities. I think that's the vision that Jack set in the morning. This is a vision really for how to apply this large amount of data that's being generated about cities to help solve problems faced in planning, analysis, monitoring, and responding to events, whether it's environmental change or economic pressures. So a more seamlessly flow of information about location, the spatial characteristics, and the design and behavior of those assets, those things, will be essential to enabling government leaders to manage the timing and impact of events on citizens in increasingly densifying cities, as we see here. This brings me to the final road ahead topic for today for what we are calling solution products. These are a whole new class of software product being developed at Esri. The three that have been announced and have been talked about, they support focused workflows. They're independent but also integrated into Esri's core GIS development efforts, but they're really unique in their development teams. The first one we released last summer, it's ArcGIS Hub. It helps governments align their communities around initiatives and provides a platform for community engagement and actually working together on common data and maps. The second is Indoors, which is all about smart buildings and facility management. And then finally, the third, which the one I'm more closely associated with, is Urban, designed to specifically meet the needs of those who work in the fields of urban planning and design and regional planning. So ArcGIS Hub, it's enabling civic participation it's been designed inherently to use open data to provide a framework for how open data applies to certain policy initiatives. So it's really a management framework that says if you want to eliminate traffic deaths, usually mayors would call it Vision Zero, you need a layer talking about where the traffic deaths happen, where the street improvements are happening, and this has to happen over a series of years. So it basically defines the data necessary to measure the problem and to solve the problem. Hub is fully released. The team is now actually packaging these initiative templates, which are released about 4 times a year with our ArcGIS Online. As I mentioned, Vision Zero, there's also a handful of other templates that are ready to go, and we developed those templates with our close partnership with the cities themselves. So Vision Zero was designed with LA, and I believe the opioid crisis template, which is a sad but true topic in the US, is being designed with some cities in the Midwest. ArcGIS Indoors, it's a complete indoor mapping and location system. Indoors will bring GIS inside the building and provide wayfinding for people, assets, and so you can find specific rooms. It supports smart buildings by looking at things like operations and asset management. We've recently started a public beta for the mobile app, which can be used with your own campus map. You can send me an email or see me after if you're interested. The mobile app is providing wayfinding and navigation. We saw a bit of the custom ones being developed at the university here. That was kind of fascinating. We can automatically generate the network for floor plans based on the polygons from your CAD drawings. This routing is based also on accessibility. So that generated network for the floor also takes into account whether or not you need an elevator or stairs. If you're in a wheelchair, you obviously need an elevator. And it will automatically sync with your Outlook calendar. So if you're on the Esri campus, you can actually use this. If you're on the Esri campus and you're in a wheelchair and you have to get across campus to room O2E, you're going to have a time given to you for an estimated amount of time it would take to get to that venue, taking into account the elevator. So there's also browser-based campus maps that offer a similar capability. That's the one I use the most at our campus. And Indoors also includes dashboard templates for O&M. The release date for Indoors is planned for the end of the year. And finally, ArcGIS Urban, which is transforming the process of urban development through planning. ArcGIS Urban is currently in development. We have partnered with about 15 cities and counties and regional planning associations around the world to test and validate these workflows that we had outlined in the demo this morning. The two primary use cases that we're going to be releasing with first is centered around design review or development review, which is the front counter of any planning office if you go as a real estate developer to get your permit. And the second is around zoning and land use scenario planning. Too often you find planners are using a tool like SketchUp and going parcel by parcel to figure out the highest and best use of a land based on the allowed zoning. We want to automate and make that a programmatic process. So we'll release a public beta towards the end of the year. We are also planning for a full release in second quarter of 2019. So I mentioned there are small learn more links on each of these slides. If you didn't catch those resources, I wanted to list them here so you can take a snapshot with your phone. I'm pretty sure these slides will be made available as well through the website as PDFs. These are the products, and for those of you finished, these are the solution products. And thank you very much for your time.